Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with Nate Payo, the show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. Again, I am your host, Nate Payo. Today, got a super special guest, Gina Mo. Gina Mo is a confidence coach. She helps build clear and consistent communication, the way you show up with your business online. Not only is Gina one of my friends and influencers in this social media marketplace, but I'm also a client of hers. She's done a fantastic job of reviewing my website and telling me how I could improve upon it. And to be honest with you, Gina, welcome to the show. Before I kind of go on this tangent, thank you for coming on. I was so shocked when you sent over the final results. Like you had this deal where you're like, hey, I'm going to audit I'll do your audit for your website. Just, and it was just like, hey, that's just a price. Like, how could you not say yes to? Like, even if you got nothing back in return, you came back with this like amazing, like 15, 20 minute video, just like with tons and tons of cool, like super, super insightful stuff, not garbage generic feedback, but like real things that had to do with the person, me, who reviewed it. And like, I was like, I was blown away by how good it was. So usually we get to the plugs a little later, but I thought we'd start it off with the plug.
Oh, I like it. It's unconventional, which is, again, how we met in the Unconventional Leaders work group, right? The Facebook group there. So that works, right?
Yeah.
A little bit backwards.
We were talking a little bit too, how you're a seasoned pro at this and you're taking my show. That's usually what I do is I introduce like how we met, where we met.
Well, I love it. Yeah.
Okay. So what questions do you have for me? I'm ready to answer.
Well, I would love to know how this process is going for you. How do you feel behind the microphone of your own podcast?
I feel very confident and clear and concise.
Good.
No, I'm working on it. No, but seriously, we did meet on Unconventional Leaders, which I'm sure you kind of arrived at the same roundabout way. You're just kind of trying to figure out, hey, where do podcasters hang out? Like, especially if we're going to start one. So, and somehow we come across Heather Paraday. I always talk about Heather and how influential she has been with my journey, because a lot of the people I've met along the way have come through her directly or indirectly. And you just kind of get in this Facebook group and you're like, hey, I'm new here. And everybody's like, hey, what's up? Let's connect. You get on a phone call, you start chatting with people. And it's amazing how fastly, things turn. How did you get kind of connected with the Unconventional Leaders Facebook group?
Heather and I have attended the same Summit of Greatness that Lewis Howes runs every year in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I live. And she and I got to know each other that way. And so I knew she did like the content stuff, and I was in her group that wasn't specifically focused about podcasting, but at some point last year, I think it was in June or so, she said, I'm thinking of creating a mastermind to teach people how to start their own podcasts. And it was literally 3 days after I had declared to somebody else, you know what, by my birthday in October, I'll release one episode of my own podcast. And lo and behold, working with her 6 weeks later, I had a season of 10 episodes complete. Like, she's just so amazing at getting you to really take action on stuff. So I kind of found her through that. Like, I really connected with her through that, but I had known her for a couple years before that from that live event that we met. But you're right, she's just incredible, and she's bubbly and fun, and she makes learning, just that much more pleasant.
Yes, it's awesome. And everybody in there is super, super cool. And I like how it's not like a spammy, salesy group. It's like real people wanting to learn and engage and help each other out. And there's people from like me who I showed up and I'm like, hey, I think I'd like to figure out what people are doing and how they podcast. And then there's other people that are very successful, but doing it for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. So as I've evolved my podcast, I've decided to initiate. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording. I'm going to add a little professionalism to the show. and start with some pre-arranged questions instead of it being a free-for-all. So my first question for you is, do you believe people are lucky? What are your thoughts on luck?
Absolutely not. No, I believe, and this is like an idea that I was raised on. Like I can hear my father's voice as you're saying that in my head. There's no such thing as luck. Luck, I come from, my background as an opera singer. I went to school to be a classical singer. And I mean, you always hear about like getting the big break and making it big and like being in the right place at the right time. But the reality is, if you look at any artist or musician or entrepreneur, they're all entrepreneurial in some fashion. If you look at them, it's that they were working hard enough to be in the right place at the right time. It's not luck. You just did all the right things to get yourself to the place you needed to be to then finally take it to the next level. I do not in any way, shape, or form believe in luck. I think it is something that is completely within our control to change our circumstances. Because if you say that there's luck that's at a foot of anything, then you're just completely releasing control to everything else. And that could be your mood, your success, your momentum, all of those things. And so while I do believe that there's certain kind of lucky breaks that can happen, they can appear that way, I truly believe you had to do everything you did beforehand to be in that place at that time. Because think about it like with relationships or something, right? Like you meet the right person at the wrong time. How lucky is that? Well, that's pretty shitty, actually, right? And that happens in business and things all the time. Like you can have all of your ducks in a row and be in the wrong place at the right time, and that still doesn't do you any good. So it's not a luck thing. You still have to have so many things taken care of ahead of time that you had to take care of. It was completely in your control.
I totally 100% agree with that. Like there's no such thing as people just happenstance, right place, right time. I mean, maybe in the course of history, in the course of probability, that will happen. That stuff does happen. But for most of us, being in the right place in the right time is about putting yourself in chances for the right place, right time to happen more often. Like I like this story of Ted Williams, who is a famous baseball player. I believe he's the last person to hit over 400 in baseball. Wow. And they talk about how he did it. And he said, well, I don't swing at every pitches. Like I know that there's certain pitches I can hit and there's other pitches I definitely can't. So I really restricted the pitches I even swing at to the pitches I'm more likely to hit. And that's the same thing with being in the right place at the right time. When you're on a journey, it's like, let's call it like you want some luck to happen to you, you want some successful outcome. You start thinking about, well, where do the people that are on this path hang out? You said, hey, meet the right person at the right time. Like, if you know what this idea of this person you want to meet is, like values or lifestyle or common interests, shared goals. Like, okay, if I want to meet somebody that's really into fishing, like, I probably should go hang out where people fish, not at the driving range. You could maybe meet somebody that's really into fishing at the driving range, but the chances of them being into fishing is going to be a lot more likely if you go to where they hang out. So I believe that you create your own luck in the sense of you figure out where you need to go and you just kind of hang out in those places. And if you hang out there long enough, your probabilities improve. And then, it becomes less about luck and more about, hard work and dedication and success. So cool.
Oh, absolutely.
So you talked about yourself being an opera singer.
I was, yes.
You were. You have a podcast and you also talk about your story of becoming an opera singer or pursuing your passions of being an opera singer in your podcast. And your podcast also, it's a really interesting topic because premise, it's not a topic, it's a premise. You why don't you tell what your premise is?
So it's something I've put a pin in, but it does still exist and has access to it and everything. It's on YouTube right now. So we can make sure that the YouTube...
Right. I think it's a really good way of hearing your story too.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way of hearing my story. It was the first time. It was funny because when I had people who even knew me in college, like went through music school with me, I had them messaging me after listening to the episode saying, I never knew that about you. And there they were living alongside me at the time. And it's like, oh, well, that's interesting that I wasn't sure whether or not I was being vulnerable enough. But the premise of my show is to give people the platform to share a story that they've never shared publicly before. And they have the opportunity to remain anonymous, so that they can really maximize that vulnerability and have almost a healing experience by finally just like purging that story and talking about it from a growth mindset. It's not about like, oh, look how horrible my life was or any of that, but it truly is about just having this moment of finally getting to speak your piece. And there were plenty of people who chose to remain anonymous, and there were others who didn't. Obviously, and me telling my own story, it's hard to say anonymous, but I mean, getting to tell my own story in as much detail as I got to, it was a very interesting, cathartic sort of experience, and being able to see how people respond to that story. I mean, that's really, as a confident communication coach, that's really what I'm driving at with my clients. I want them to see the power of being able to be vulnerable and authentic and sharing the things they've been through, because they're not realizing that that's part of their credibility. Mm-hmm. Part of what you've gone through, not just your education, because I mean, what does opera singing have to do with me helping people with their online marketing strategy? Nothing, unless I communicate to them that what I loved about music was the connection, was about really creating a story that other people could connect with and understand, even when I'm not singing in English. Like, that's important to me. It's something I love doing, and it's something that you get to do in your marketing too. If they're not connecting with you, then it's not going to work for you. They're not going to understand what it is that you offer, why you are the answer, like all of those little nuances. So when I phrase it that way and I see people respond to it that way, okay, all of a sudden my opera singing career somehow translates into credibility for what it is I'm up to. But you don't know those things until you share them and actually see how people react to it. Because there's so much that people recognize of themselves in you, and it immediately grows that know, like, and trust factor. I mean, that happened on our phone call, I even remember, right? Like, we just got to talking and you go off on tangents about random things, and you just have such a strong connection with somebody so quickly.
Yes, it's so true. Like the relatable aspect, when you share a portion of yourself, people relate to that. Yeah. And a lot of times, especially for me, and I try to live upfront with my story, because I've been in that boat where I haven't shared a portion of my life with people, and I let my own self-doubt, my own scares and worries hold me back. So I'm trying to push out this idea of vulnerability, authenticity, and just kind of openness, because it makes you more relatable. And when the more open and the more relatable you are, I find it's easier to connect with people and build trust with them. And I'm all about building a network of personal relationships. There's what's going to happen. That's who you're going to meet that's going to help you along your path. But the real power is when you can start connecting people within your network to each other to help them out. And the way you kind of get and build trust with people is you create this authenticity, this vulnerability, this relatableness. But when you don't start down that path, like you said, you got called by some people that went through it, lived that portion of that life with you, and they didn't know that about you. And I think that's what I found myself is we have these thoughts in our head that we struggle with. And when we start talking about them, we find out other people felt the same way, or didn't know that about you, or thought maybe they thought you were super confident, and didn't realize that you struggled with self-doubt too, or they didn't know you had this journey you wanted to go down, and they were inspired by the things you did do. When you start sharing that story, oh my God, I do have this amazing story to tell us. I'm not this, everybody, I think we always because we lived every moment of our life. We don't see the highlight reel sometimes. We don't know how exciting it could be and why people would find it interesting. But when you share it, all of a sudden somebody comes back and they tell you hey, I really like that thing you did about this and this, and it really inspired me to do this. You go, hey, my story does kind of make a difference. And especially for you, you're helping entrepreneurs, you're helping them find their path. They're helping them have a consistent message, be confident what they're talking about. And they go, oh, I don't know. Why am I important? Why am I different? And you find out you're the only person that's went to college to become an opera, to be a successful entrepreneur coach, who also lives in Ohio, who also, and these other 18 hobbies. You're oh yeah, I'm right. I do have this pretty interesting life. And then there'll be somebody else that connects to you with that. And they're able to relate. They might not be all into all those same things, but they're just like, hey, I feel like I know this person a little bit better.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is number one, you're letting them into your world. And by doing that, there's immediately this sense of like trust, because it's like, oh, you trusted me with something kind of vulnerable. You trusted me with something that was potentially a painful memory or something, right? Like music for me is still a pretty painful memory, but I've just gotten more comfortable talking about it. But sometimes the most interesting thing about your story is that it's not interesting, that it's not unique. And that camaraderie of, oh God, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. I thought I was the only one who had that happen to me. I mean, how many times does that come up in conversation? You know, I had experienced an eating disorder for a long time. And a lot of any sort of mental health issues is a lot of feeling lonely, a lot of feeling like you're the only one who this happens to. And despite how much you talk about it to your therapist or something, you still feel really alone, like there's something wrong with you. And I remember being in like a group setting, talking to other people and hearing them share part of their experiences and going, oh, that's actually very similar. Like here's this anorexic girl and I have a binge eating disorder and a bulimic, eating disorder, but we're actually very similar in our experience of what's happening. And there's something so relieving about that, to know that we're not alone in what it is that we're experiencing. So, I mean, it's one of the most common things that my clients complain about is like, well, what's so special about me? Like, I'm nervous to be the one to talk about me and my business. And that's such a part that's missing from so many people is if you're not sharing about you in your business, then there is no your business. It's just a business. And then I don't know how to tell you from any other corporate entity, like why you? Why are you the thing? And if you don't share those personal sorts of things, then I don't know why you, who may or may not be the cheapest option, should be my option. And when you get comfortable doing that, it's just practice. It's practice over and over. And when you recognize that in other people hearing their stories, you become a little braver and you start to do that. That was the original premise of the podcast, is like, okay, show the example of what's possible and that people aren't alone in the way that they feel about things that have happened to them in their life.
I think that's like one of your gifts though, is I felt when you reviewed my podcast, like we had a conversation on the phone, so you kind of knew a little bit about me and like how I kind of interact. But we didn't go on like a road trip for 10 days and sleep in bunk beds and really get to know each other. But
I didn't get to paint your nails.
None of that stuff. So when do we get that? When's that offering?
After quarantine, man.
After quarantine. Good call. So you like looked at my website and you picked some things that about my personality that I must have shared with you, like either intentionally or unintentionally. And you said, hey, this really showcases you. This is not consistent. This is kind of like you're kind of not really explaining the why behind yourself. And you start you go, yeah, you know what? I'm not. Like I picked some things that showcase my personality, but I didn't tie it into the message. And why anybody would want to do this stuff and follow. And I was like really impressed that like you picked up on a lot of these things and you were able to read into it a little bit and provide some unique insight into making myself better. And I think, like you said, if you're working with people that have a business and they don't want to be the face of that business because they're scared, why would anybody care what I have to say? And I was actually thinking about this today, and maybe this is a thought I had about myself, but like a lot of times people will say, well, I don't want to be the face of it because I don't want people to think all I do is care about what other people think. Like I'm really in it for the attention. And I started thinking about it and it's like, well, maybe that's a limiting belief in the sense of you do care what other people think. So that's why you don't want to do it because you're worried about what people are actually going to think about you. So flip it and say, I'm doing this not because I want all this attention, but because I need to stop caring what other people think. I need to lead with myself, put myself out there, be that open, relatable person. Now I'm going to have business clients come to me and say, hey, like, I really dig that person. I understand them. I connect with them. I feel relatable to them. Like I trust them. I mean, basically that's what it comes down to is like, I trust that this person's going to do a good job for me. And who do we do business with? We do business with people we like. And it's really
I would pay far more money to the guy I trust versus the guy who probably has cheaper service and like I have a weird experience with. And I bought a car that way too. I was between two different cars at two different dealerships, and the one dealership like wouldn't even give me the time of day. And so the little bit more expensive car I went with because the guy who sold it to me was engaged with me enough that we found out that I went to school with his niece. Like that's customer service to me. That's somebody who's putting in the effort. That's the guy I want to buy my car from. But it's that story of like, because you're absolutely right. It is a little bit backwards where we're afraid that we're being selfish. We're afraid that we're being too in your face, that it's all about me or something. But I have to flip the script on that because, when I think about my singing journey, you can listen to the whole episode and talking about my story. But the crux of it is that I had terrible performance anxiety as a singer, which is why I ultimately walked away. And when it came to singing in front of other people, I was terrified. And one of the thoughts that consistently came up is that it's selfish. It's selfish to sing in front of people because I'm showing off, even when they ask me to. So when I got asked to sing at a family friend's funeral and I woke up with a tickle in my throat, afraid that I was going to botch it, I made it about me. I made it about me and how I was going to mess it up and I was going to do a terrible job and me this and me that. Who the hell am I to say that my fear outweighs the need of this grieving family who's burying their son that day? Who the hell am I to say that my fear outweighs the breakthrough that they can have by me sharing my gift? And when anybody is sharing their business, I mean, obviously you start a business because it means something to you. If you're starting it because you want to make money, odds are it's not going to work out well for you. So if you're starting a business that means something to you, I need to know that. And it's not going to seem like you're showing off. It's going to seem like you're passionate. But it's when you step into that character of like professionalism and like you're trying to be something you're not and you're not allowing those authentic and vulnerable parts to come out, that's when it seems like you're showing off or that something's off and that people don't trust you. It's not because you're showing up as the face of your business. It's because you're not showing up as you. I mean, if you ever get the experience of like, if you meet somebody at a party or something and they're nice and they're cordial and you're just like, I don't like that person. Like, I don't know what it is. Like in my gut, I don't like that person. You're picking up on this like energetic inauthenticity is essentially what you're picking up on. And maybe they're just in a bad mood, so they're putting on a show, or maybe they genuinely are a bit of an asshole. Who knows the reason? But that's generally why we experience that, is because the person is inauthentic and we can't always put words to it because it's just this sort of energy exchange, right? And that can happen even online. Like the energy we pour into, I know it's a little woo-woo, but like with the energy we pour into creating stuff is picked up on the other side. And so if we're not genuine with it, that will get picked up on. And that's probably where that'll come from. So if you're you, then that's far less likely to happen.
I think you're right that we pick up on traits because, I don't want to get into like the whatever you call it, how we grew up from our ancestors, because I don't know enough about it, but, we were probably evolved because we had to make quick reflex decisions. Are people friend or foe? Are they danger? Are they safe? So we pick up on things when people aren't being authentic. And I think that might be a thing when you say, hey, why do I not connect with this person? Because they're being somebody else. There's a not an element of intentional deceit, but it's like something doesn't feel right. My guard is up. I need to be wary and I need to be protective. And so, if you're turning over your business to somebody or to handle it for you, that's a big trust thing that you're doing. So you want to make sure you feel really, really comfortable and you made a statement about your gift. Like you have a gift. And I think that needs to be reiterated with people is that, everybody has certain gifts that they're really good at something better than anybody else in the world. And some people are like really, really good at really, really big things like hitting a baseball or throwing a football really good. They get paid a lot of money for it. But some people are just like really, 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 really good at making 5 or 6 people really close to them really, really happy and engaged. So like you're just because your gift is small, it's making a bigger impact on fewer people. It doesn't mean it's any less valuable. And so once you kind of like figure out who your gifts are and you said, hey, what if you could really, really make a difference in like 3 or 4 other people's lives and change them? They could go down one path and be destined for disaster, or they could go down another path and achieve all their best version of themselves possible. And all it took was a little bit of your influence to send them down that right path. And you chose to hold on to your gift and not share it with the world. Like, I think that is a little bit selfish, and you have to kind of like go and you say, hey, I have to put this out there. Like, even if I don't feel comfortable with it, you'll get more comfortable the more you do it, but put it out there and let people receive that gift and let them be the judge if it's true and authentic or not. And chances are they usually do. If you are authentic, they're going to read into that. You're not going to connect with everybody, but you're going to find your tribe of people that like, hey, I like Gina Mo. She's the bomb. And like, I want to be in her group, and they're going to like be drawn to that. Yeah. And when you have good people you're drawn to, it lifts you up too. And you're able to do your gifts a lot better.
Exactly. And I mean, like you said, I mean, it's not like the size of the gift or the type of gift, like it doesn't matter. Whatever you're great at that you love and are passionate about, I don't care how extroverted, introverted, outgoing or not that you are, you're passionate about it when you talk about it. I've met a woman who, is in the financial sort of area, right? She does some financial coaching. And that to me is a topic that like might as well be Greek. Like I have no idea what people are talking about. I'm still very much learning a lot about my own personal finances. And when I had this conversation with her, she is so lit up about her work and she loves it. And she's not the stereotypical, like, accountant, boring, nerdy, like whatever. She's lit up and like excited and chatting and like all bubbly and everything. And she's generally an introverted person, but she just loves what she does. And so it doesn't matter that it's something kind of mundane parenting. If parenting is the thing you love and you love your kids and you love making them awesome cakes at their birthday and planning great outings for them on the weekends, like, own it and own it proudly, because it is a gift and it's something that somebody else wishes they could do. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that, just because maybe you don't make as much money or any money doing it. Like it's just still something that's yours and that you really can fill yourself up by. Like think about how much joy you could get from doing the thing that you love, getting to like really lean into it, as opposed to shaming yourself for the one thing that truly makes you happy.
Well, I think too, when you own that gift, like, let's use that example of like, you're really good at being a parent and you're really good at being involved in your kid's life. But if you still had a career and you still had a business and you still were trying to navigate through life, and you keep that part of yourself separate. And I know some people are private and they don't like to mix business and personal, but if you let that side of yourself known, like, hey, I'm really, really like super, super parent and I coach Little League. And then somebody else you're doing business with is like, well, I coach Little League too, or my kids play Little League, or like, well, you're super involved with like, which league should I be in? Like, what team should my kid be playing for? Who's the best coach? Like, all of a sudden, if you're relatable, now you're having a conversation about something else. You're becoming friends. And then when you need to talk about business, it's like, oh yeah, let's do it because we're friends now, because you've let that relatable side of you out. So I think there's a lot to be said about
my favorite story about that sort of thing is, so I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm very proud of being from New Jersey. Can't let go of that phone number. But I live in Columbus, Ohio now. I've been here about 4 years. And I met a woman maybe the better part of a year ago now at an event. She is the executive director of an organization around here. And I went up to her at the end of an event and said, hey, it's great to meet you. I'd love to chat with you about coming in as a speaker for one of your events sometime. And so we set up a phone call to talk, and we get to talking, and she parrots my phone number back to me to call me back later after, a general conversation. We're having small talk. We're talking about some things. And I mentioned, oh, no, make sure you get the area code right, because it's 973, not 937. 937 is a more common area code here. She says, oh, no way, is that New Jersey? And I said, yeah. Now, mind you, we met in Ohio, okay? However many years after I moved here. She and I went to the same high school in New Jersey. How would I have known that if we had not gone down the rabbit hole of talking about that sort of thing? If I'm like super resistant to talking about anything personal, this woman immediately bonded with me and like went to introduce me to all these other people as this fantastic speaker and keynote speaker. And she does all this stuff about communication. And we went to the same high school. Isn't that amazing? Like now I have this amazing, unique connection with this woman that I never would have known had I not gone down that rabbit hole with her. So, I mean, like you said, it's the exact sort of science you can't replicate. The only thing you can do is just dig in with somebody.
Well, it's like you create an immediate bond with somebody, and then they're vouching for you and they're plugging you into their community, and your standing's already there. So like your ability to bridge trust and like somebody says, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody I think is really cool. You're like, well, I think you're cool. So I'm sure that they're pretty cool too, or you wouldn't have brought them to me. Like I've already kind of built a little bit more trust and relationship. And I think, boom, that goes into like how referrals work. You make a connection with somebody, you're doing business, and then they're referring you to some friends and you're already kind of vouched for it, and it takes off from that. So my next question, or my last defined question, planned question, was how do you define the term all in on an idea or an outcome? What does all in mean to you?
I generally describe myself as an all-in kind of person, because if I know I'm going for something, there is nothing that will prevent me from getting to it. And it may not be the path that I think originally is going to work. Maybe it's plan Z instead of plan A, but there is nothing that will stop me from going after that thing. Absolutely nothing. So all in to me is just never say die. And I mean, it used to look like blinders on and ignore everybody else and pedal to the metal and all that sort of thing. But I've come to really love my balance in my life and time management and having a more healthy balance of relationships and things. So it looks less like that now than it used to, but there is still some of that. Like when I do have the times to work, then yes, I put my blinders on and, Pomodoro method my way out of something. But ultimately, it's really just, I will never quit until this is true. And that if I truly want something, I am all in, and there is nothing you can say that will prevent me from believing that I can have it, or that I'll get there, or believe it, or whatever it is. And yeah, it will be mine. So adorable that you think that it's impossible, or adorable that you think that, it's going to take a while. I don't care. That's not what that's about.
I love it. Never say die. Is that it? That's the Goonies, right?
Yeah, it is the Goonies.
Goonies never say die. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
But you're right. Like, I think, I don't want to say younger. I say like when we're less experienced with pursuing a passion, it does become very like hammered and pedal to the metal, like as hard as we can. Where it's just this like aggressive pursuit. But as we become more experienced, I think we learned that you don't have to have an aggressive pursuit to kind of like have this never say die attitude. Sometimes, this is important. We'll get there a different way. The door's locked. We'll go through the window, or the timing's not right, or let's be patient. The door's just not open because the store's not open. Like, let's just wait a little bit. It's going to be easy to walk in. We don't have to, bust down the walls to get there. And we become smarter and better about it. So, gosh.
Well, that's the thing is that I used to be a super impatient person. And that was where a lot of the mental health issues and the eating disorder came from, is because I had such a strong hold on everything in my life that nothing was allowed to be out of place. And that lack of control, or that feeling out of control, was just incredibly detrimental for me. I didn't have great relationships. I didn't have friendships. I didn't feel close to anybody or anything other than work. That's not a healthy way to live.
No, it's hard to give up that control. Yeah. So let's talk about what you do, so we can make sure everybody knows what you do. Who are the types of clients you like working with, and why should somebody, other than you're awesome, why should people seek you out? Who are the people you want to work with?
I love working with the people who they're entrepreneurial minded. So whether or not you actually own your business is one thing, but it's somebody who's entrepreneurial minded. They know they want big things and that they see change in the world that they can be instrumentally a part of. So I love people like that. And I love people who love to learn, that they're constantly reading books and watching the webinars and taking the courses and all the things. But for whatever reason, there's still a lack of momentum in the way that their business is going. And so it's kind of like this stop, start sort of thing where they get a little bit of success, but then it slows down and they get down on themselves and they're like, all right, well, let's do this again. And like, this momentum doesn't really get to build into anything consistent. So more than anything, I support people with clarity, confidence, and consistency. And all of that is in the realm of their online marketing and showing up as the face of their business. So, I support people who are scared to be the face of their business, and we get them doing Facebook Lives and speaking and creating a strategy that really actually harnesses their inherent traits, things they like to do, but also exploring the things that they're afraid to do to determine whether or not that's just a strategy that doesn't work for them or if there's just been avoiding it, right? Like that's an important distinction. But then it's also like I worked with you, having clarity around what it is that you're creating, because you can have the best idea in the world, but if you're not speaking a language that your customer understands, then it's going to fall on deaf ears. And that's what happened with my first business, was creating a business that everybody said was so great and so exciting, but I wasn't talking to my customers in a way that they actually understood. So I didn't make a single dollar. I don't want to see that ever happen to anybody else. So it's these people who know like kind of the idea of what they need to do, but it's just not clicking. Like all the gears and cogs aren't really connecting quite yet. And so there's this lack of consistency, this lack of momentum. And any way that I can give somebody clarity or confidence in those areas just makes me happy.
That's, I would, if I was, figuring out like, hey, is Gina Mo right for me? I would start, you post a ton of like videos on social media. And what I noticed right off the bat is, what you're talking about. You're very clear, and like how you describe the process. Like if I'm thinking of like describing the process, it's like a bunch of mushed up marbled words together. And you're just like, here it is, very, very easily understandable and done. But then when you start working with you, like it's because you easily describe like how to do the things that need to do. You're relating to the person that's doing it. It's not easy. Like it like when I hear it, I'm like, Gina makes it sound frickin' easy. Like it sounds easy. It's not easy because I got to ask the questions I don't want to ask myself, and I got to put myself out there in this position. So it's definitely not easy. So I would say you instill the right amount of challenge in people to dig deep inside, but you're also explaining to them like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Okay. Like it's just follow the numbers and think inside of you.
Yeah. Well, number one, I have to be an example of what I teach, right? So I have to speak clearly and concisely. I love to find an idea and make it as concise as possible. But if I do need to explain it more because somebody doesn't get it, I know how to do that, right? I always thought about that with teaching, right? Like if I was ever a teacher, like would I have what it takes to be a teacher in a room full of children, all with different learning needs and affinities? Like, I don't know that I could do that, but one-on-one, I can do that because I can recognize what you need. But I mean, that is what it's about. It's taking whatever it is that you have to teach and breaking it down into smaller steps, because we want to make it so complicated. We want to make it so that it's like, this big audacious thing and like, look how well I know my shit. When in reality, if you show them the little stuff and you make it palatable for them, they're like, oh, I kind of get it now. Okay, now it makes sense. Like health and wellness is a big area for that. Like it's kind of the same information over and over, right? So how do you package it differently for somebody to really get it, for somebody to really walk away with it? So it's the little things, right? And I mean, also considering today is May 4th, right? So may the 4th be with you. So you're my 25th podcast interview this year. Like I do this all the time. I have so much practice doing this stuff. So it's not that I just woke up one day and I had this affinity for it, but it's also practicing through things like music, like having skills to practice as a musician practices and teaching that to clients. That helps them too, because now it's like they have an effective way to practice instead of just flying by the seat of their pants. Like, I kind of know what I'm doing. Like you need information and strategy. Like just the education itself doesn't help you. You need the strategy of how to practice this as well to actually sink in for good habits.
So I did. That reminded me. I wanted to ask you about that 50 podcast thing.
Yeah.
Because you're not the first person that I've seen on a mission to do 50 podcasts in like a condensed amount of time.
Yeah.
So what brought that idea to you, and like what are you looking to accomplish with it?
I don't know. But what I'm finding, the number kind of called to me. I hadn't really seen anybody else do that. I've seen people declare goals and do all that. But I mean, I still work a day job. So I have to be respectful of that like I can't do them every single day. That, 365 would be insane for me and my schedule. But the 50 called to me because it was like, okay, it's something that's an audacious goal. I still have to do 4 and change a month in order to meet that goal. And what I'm finding is, without meaning to do this, that I really allowed myself to find different avenues to tell different stories and share different messages. So before, because I was doing them with less intention, kind of just taking them as they came, I told very similar stories. I talked about confidence, I talked about consistency, I talked about clarity, talked about my own story and breaking through fear and all of that. But now, I recorded one earlier today where I got to talk about my eating disorder. I haven't talked about that publicly in detail before. Mm-hmm. And, talking to you here, and we're kind of going off on this other direction of connection a little bit. And I haven't really gotten to talk about that before either. So it's been interesting to see how, number one, I want to spread the message of everything that I know about clarity and confidence and be able to give people those resources. So it was a strategy in terms of spreading my audience and my influence. But ultimately now I'm really excited about how many other new stories I may get to share that I otherwise wouldn't have, because I'm on this mission, because I'm actively seeking them out from people I don't already know.
Yeah. I've been amazed, since I've been on my journey, how awesome the conversations go. And you're right, you have maybe a central message you kind of want to talk about, and somebody says, hey, you want to come on my podcast? What are you going to talk about? I don't know, I kind of got this theme, and we'll try to stick within the box as much as you want, but we can go about anywhere. But you find a way to tell your story a little bit differently, that's maybe somebody else will hear it differently and they'll relate to it differently and say, I got to know you more. That's how I related to you, And so I leave with it, and I'm just wow, that's just amazing. I just feel so pumped up and so, jazzed. I'm going to go conquer the world, after connecting with somebody. So I've had a ton of fun on this podcast with you. We're running out of time. Don't want to keep you here all night. You got 25 more to do. Obviously not tonight.
Not today, I don't.
You got to keep your voice. You don't want to have that tickle.
I teach that too. I teach, because of my background as an opera singer, I teach how vocal health and how to take care of your voice. There was one night in particular, I remember, I spoke for 3 hours straight because I had an interview and then a strategy client, and then I had my call with my parents, which easily is an hour. So 3 hours straight. I haven't lost my voice in 15 years.
Awesome.
I know how to take care of my instruments. So if that's something people are running into, please connect with me, because I know how to teach you how to fix that.
Many bags of tricks. Where can people find you?
Yes, GinaMolinari.com is the best place to find me. And I hang out most on Facebook. That's where all that free fun content is, facebook.com/theGinaMo. And you can email me from my website or message me through Facebook. Either one works as well.
Awesome. All those links will be in the show notes, as well as how to get in touch with Gina everywhere you can find her. So loved having you on. Go out there, connect with Gina. She's fabulous. So.
Oh, I'm going to give you that link to my story too for the YouTube thing if people want to listen to that whole thing.
Yes, you should. You should listen for sure. Awesome. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.